My name is Yolanda Kuzula, Executive Consultant at Sanlam Umbrella Solutions. I'm excited to welcome you to the second Imali webinar for 2024. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. On some guidelines, your camera and microphones have been disabled. However, please do feel free to send through your questions via the Q&A button. Time permitting, we will address these at the end of the presentation or via a Q&A document sent post the event. We'll also ensure that we make available a recording of this webinar. Now, off to the business of the day. Let us talk about finances, your money, imali zakho. Talking about finances, especially planning for retirement, is super important for your peace of mind during retirement. The Imali sessions are all about making this seemingly scary topic a little bit less scary for you. Today, the Sanlam Umbrella fans have dedicated this particular session to guide you through the different phases of life and how they affect your retirement savings. We're diving deep into the crucial factors that shape your retirement journey towards a financial security and living a life with confidence, offering you insights, strategies tailored to each life event. From the early days of your career, navigating through milestones to the later years of drawing closer to your retirement, we're here to unpack it all. Meet Virgil Prinsloo, a familiar face to you, our audience, and the head of product support of the Sanlam Umbrella Solutions. Virgil is here to guide you, shedding light on how various life events can influence your savings path. With Virgil's expertise, you'll gain a clear understanding of how these events shape your retirement journey, empowering you to make wise choices at every turn, whether you're at the starting line of building your nest egg or tweaking your retirement strategy. Virgil, welcome and good afternoon.
Afternoon, Yolanda. Thanks so much for having me again, and a very warm welcome to all our members in the session today.
Thanks, Virgil. I see you've got a packed topic for us today. I would really like for you to share with us, why did we choose to center this session around life events?
Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks for the question. I consider every opportunity an opportunity to engage with members in anything regarding the retirement fund, the retirement benefits, or like you mentioned, Imali my money, or like I like to say in these sessions, in this instance, your money. So for me, why the topic is important, I make use of every opportunity. So I found even at social events, social gatherings, at some point in time, we get to speaking about, where do you work, who do you work for? And I often ask people, do you belong to a retirement fund, a pension fund, a provident fund? And while it's no longer surprising to me, the answers that I sometimes get, it remains alarming. And I think these sessions are good because that's what we need to try and eradicate, that people are not unsure anymore about if they belong to a fund or not, what are the associated benefits for the fund. It's something we must change. And I've used the example in previous sessions, if we refer to our previous Imali where we focused on maximizing your retirement savings. I used the example of a bank account, and I said, if I were to ask you, Yolanda, or any one of our members listening today, how much money do you have in your bank account? Whilst you may not know the exact amount, you are going to know, do you have 50 Rand in your account? Do you have 500 Rand in your account? Or do you have 5,000 Rand in your account? You know more or less. So what is alarming to me is that the money or your fund credit that for ordinary working South Africans, the money they accumulate in their retirement fund is often the single biggest or largest asset that members will accumulate in their lifetime. Yet members know so little about their retirement fund. Now, just to reflect somewhat on your question, so we're doing our part, or at least we are trying to, by hosting these Imali sessions, and I'm just giving you a look in terms of previous sessions that we've done so far and what we focused on. Um, I think the purpose of today's session is to realize that looking at it once is not enough. Once off, members need to keep engaging with the tools that we are making available to make sure that they are still on track for their retirement goals at every step of the way during their life. From a Sanlam perspective, the Sanlam purpose is, it says, empowering generations to be financially confident, secure, and prosperous. Now, I've stolen a little phrase there from one of our senior leaders who shared with us earlier in this week, and I'm paraphrasing now. He said, our members are not passengers of their financial journey. They should be in the driver's seat. I'd like to take a moment just to unpack a little bit what that means for me and what it means for members. So we are currently navigating a retirement landscape where in the defined contribution world. So no longer, and it's been quite a long time since employers were responsible for ensuring that members retire optimally or retire comfortably. The member himself or herself is now in that driver's seat. So whilst employers have put together a fund, they've put together the structure and they've made it available to members, it remains a member's responsibility to ensure that they are saving enough money for a comfortable retirement. So on that note, as from a Sanlam point of view, our aim is to partner with clients during their financial lives, to offer diverse solutions during all the different stages of their life, and ensure that our options, our plans, we are able to adjust them as life happens to members. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, definitely you have. Thanks so much, Virgil. I'm already excited to engaging on today's topic. So without wasting any further time, please take us through the various stages, starting with members joining a company.
Thanks. So on joining a company, you've got two possibilities or two sets of members. So it can either be a new employee joining the workforce for the first time. So someone perhaps straight out of school, straight out of college, or you could find a situation where someone is changing jobs. So they've been working for a certain company for X amount of years, and now they have joined a new company who also offers a pension or provident fund. So questions members should be asking, or that should be of interest for members, is do you have an existing fund credit? And if so, what would you like to do with that fund credit? So this question is more applicable to members who have been in the workforce for a while and who's changed jobs and now transferred into the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. And those are two important considerations for members.
So before you move on to the next point, Virgil, I think what I would like to see come out is you sharing with the members whether, firstly, it is easy for them to transfer their existing fund credit from the previous employer when they are joining a company into the fund of the new employer, and how easy is it to do that?
Yeah, so if we look back to the default regs of a couple of years ago, companies or retirement fund administrators or funds are actually obliged to ask members and to determine whether members have got any existing pension fund money or paid up money. So as part of our onboarding process, we do issue members with a membership certificate a few weeks after the members join the fund. And part of that certificate, we actually ask members, do they have any paid up certificates, and would they like to forward that to Sanlam for safekeeping? And the second thing we ask is, would members like to transfer the existing retirement savings into their current fund free of charge? And I think this is something very important for members to consider, because depending on where you've chosen to make your money paid up, is there a fee involved in keeping your money paid up in that fund? And will that fee apply? We all know that if you transfer money into the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, it becomes part of your fund credit, and there is no additional administration fees or anything like that. So I think the important thing for members is to consider costs and seek financial advice to make sure that the decision they're making is the best decision for them.
Thanks, Virgil. That answers my question. You can move on to the next point.
Right. So another option or choice that members need to make when they're starting working for a new company and they belong to a fund is to consider, does the fund they belong to offer investment choice? Now, we know under the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, we've got various options, one of them being the standard option and the other being the comprehensive option. Now, under the comprehensive option, members have access to about 27 different investment portfolios. So the employer will still select a default portfolio where members will belong to, but members can make a choice and they can decide, do I want to stay in the default portfolio or do I want to switch to a more suitable portfolio? I've looked into this a little bit and just some sort of average stats. Under the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, specifically under the comprehensive option, there are more or less about 233,000 members who participate in that option. And of that option, 87% of members are in the default portfolios and 13% of members have opted to move into an individual member choice portfolio. Now, I don't know if the 87% of members have chosen to be there or if they were just defaulted there and they've never looked back. And that is why it's important, that we remind members every now and again to actually look at their, make use of the tools available, check how their money is doing, and actually determine, have I decided to be in the default portfolio or was this just where I was defaulted to and I didn't realize that I can make an investment choice? I think another interesting statistic, if you look at the average age as displayed on screen, so the average age of members in the default investment strategy is 39, and the average age for members who have opted out of the default strategies is 43. So I don't know if that's perhaps telling us a story that as members are nearing retirement age, and I know 43 is nowhere near to retirement age, but it's an average age, so there would be older members there. Perhaps members have now started thinking, am I in the right portfolio and is it time to move to a better a different portfolio? Where do I find myself in my life? I think, again, at this point, the important decision here is to seek financial advice. So from the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, we make material available. Members can see the investment returns over a period of time. You can have a look at fund fact sheets. You can even ask for not guidance, for information from our individual member support area. But ultimately, when it comes down to making a decision, members should seek financial advice, and the right time to do so is now, rather than when they are too close to retirement to significantly impact the rate that they are saving. A further consideration is the contribution rate. So again, you've joined your new employer, you've joined their fund, and whether you're starting out contributing, so whether you're fresh out of school or college, or whether you've worked before and you've just changed jobs, I think that aspect is in fact very important because yes, your fund may offer contribution choice or they may not. It's important for you to determine if they do and if they don't. Even if the fund doesn't offer contribution choice as part of their rules, members still have the ability to make AVCs, what we call them, or additional voluntary contributions at no additional expense to the member, in terms of admin fees or anything like that. These additional voluntary contributions are fully tax deductible. So depending on where you find yourself on the tax scales, it may not cost you, it will not cost you 100 Rand to save 100 Rand because the contribution is tax deductible. And if you want to know a little bit more on sort of how that works and a couple of examples, again, you can refer to our previous Imali session, Maximizing Your Retirement Savings, where we actually offer a couple of different scenarios and examples. Now, just to stress the importance of contribution choice and why it matters and why members need to make that decision now or early in their career rather than later. As you can imagine, members joining the fund, they join the fund at different stages of their life. So they can be 20 years old, as an example, 30 or 40 years old. And again, if you are that 40-year-old who transferred from a previous fund into this fund or because you changed jobs, what is it that you did with your existing fund credit? So, if depending on the rules and what you decided to do, if you decided to take that money in cash, in essence, it's saying that you are now starting over to save for retirement at the age of 40. Now, a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old saving for retirement, and let's assume the retirement age is 60 or 65 for both of them, I think it becomes abundantly clear that those two members cannot save at the same rate for retirement because one of them is going to have a better retirement outcome than the other. So again, when you're starting working for a new company and you're joining a new fund, find out if your fund offers contribution choices. Make use of the tools available like the retirement fund calculator under the Sanlam umbrella fund, and determine how much you need to be contributing to aid your journey to an optimal retirement. And like I said, if the fund doesn't make provision or the rules of your sub-fund doesn't make provision for contribution choice, you can always make additional voluntary contributions.
Virgil, before you actually move on, there's a question that I want to ask that's been received on the Q&A box. It really talks to the preservation item that you addressed at the start of this section. So the question is asking whether one is able to transfer their retirement annuities, their pension fund or a provident fund into the Sanlam umbrella fund. And I think what we really covered in this topic particularly is the transfer from one employer fund into another. But the question also speaks to individual retirement annuity funds that members have. Do you just want to touch on that quickly, please?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question. So for pension and provident funds, it's normally more straightforward because pension funds or provident funds normally are approved funds, and a transfer from one approved fund to another approved fund is possible. These days, with the positive changes in legislation, it doesn't matter whether you're coming from a pension fund anymore, from a provident fund, you are able to transfer your money into a pension or provident fund. When it comes to retirement or individual retirement annuities, that depends on the rules of that actual retirement annuity, if it allows for a transfer out to another product. From a Sanlam umbrella fund perspective, I can confirm that our rules allow for a transfer in of an individual retirement annuity.
Thanks,
Hope that answers. Thank you. Right. So
Virgil, you have been muted. Can you just unmute quickly? Thank you.
Thank you. So
still can hear you now.
Great. Still focusing on joining a company. Another consideration is flexible death benefits. Does your fund offer flexible death benefits? Now, under the Sanlam umbrella fund, we offer that as an option. Not going to go into too much detail of how it works, but you could potentially qualify for up to 10 times your annual salary as a total death cover. So if let's assume you've got an arrangement where you've got 2 times annual salary as a core benefit, you could have an additional 6 times flexible death cover. Now, not all of the participating employees under the Sanlam umbrella fund has got that as part of their package solution. It is, however, available and it's possible. So something to consider, if your employer under your sub fund does offer flexible life cover, make sure to investigate or at least check how much life cover you have. You may have in your personal capacity, you may not. And depending on your life situation, are you a single person? Are you married? Do you have children? Have you ticked the right box? Are you just going to be defaulted into the default, or are you actually consciously making a decision to say, I'm taking 1 times or 2 times or 3 times additional life cover? And if your sub fund doesn't, or your employer doesn't offer flexible arrangements, perhaps that is also the time for you to speak to your personal financial advisor. Maybe it means you need to take additional life cover in your personal capacity, but definitely something to consider when starting to work.
You're muted again, Virgil.
I think something I'm doing is muting myself here. Sorry, thanks,
Yeah.
Yolanda. So another consideration is a beneficiary nomination. Now, I know if you've attended previous Imali sessions, you would have heard this many times before. We focus on completing beneficiary nomination forms, and now more so than ever, because in terms of legislation, things have just changed, and employers and people who were previously empowered to make certain decisions regarding your death benefit can no longer do so. So when you join the company, and remember, irrespective of whether you have death benefits or not, you need to complete a beneficiary nomination, because your fund credit, if something should happen to you, will form part of a death benefit. And if this is an approved benefit, and hopefully I'm not going to go too much in detail about approved and unapproved, but if it's an approved benefit, in other words, via the fund, the trustees have a responsibility to ensure that that money is allocated to your factual and legal dependents. So without that beneficiary nomination form, it makes their job so much harder, but we're not here to focus on, how hard it is for them to do their job. But one's got to think of how this impacts the family that is left behind. If there is a beneficiary nomination on file, it makes things so much easier, and the process of actually paying out the death claim can happen so much quicker than in a case where there is no beneficiary nomination on file. So you'll see I refer to a beneficiary nomination and not specifically a form or online. That's because you can make use of either one of them. You can either complete a form and hand that into your HR. The Sanlam Umbrella Fund doesn't keep those forms on hand, and it only needs to be provided to the fund in the unfortunate event of a death claim. The better option, in my view, is to complete your beneficiary nomination online. In that way, whenever you log in to have a look at your benefits via either the Sanlam Portfolio app or the member portal, you can actually see your beneficiaries listed online. It's easier to maintain them online. And they actually print on your benefit statement, your annual benefit statement that you receive from the fund. Very important also, legislation changed about 2 years ago in terms of having a separate nomination for a funeral benefit. So previously, and we've also spoken about this before in these Imali sessions, previously the money could be paid for the funeral to either the person paying for the funeral or arranging the funeral, or to the employer, etc. That is no longer possible. The money can only be paid to the person nominated to receive the money. So as you can imagine, a death of a loved one and trying to bury a loved one, it's often a sad, it's a stressful time in the people's lives. We don't want to add to that stress. And as a member, I think it's the responsible thing to do, if I've got a death benefit, if I've got funeral benefit, to make sure that I've completed a funeral nomination, beneficiary nomination form, to ensure that my loved ones, the claim can be resolved as soon as possible. The last section I want to look at in terms of joining a fund is, do you have a will, and have you updated your will? Now, I know that it's not a specific service that falls under the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. It's not part of Pension or Provident Fund Administration. But as a member of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, Sanlam Unity Umbrella Fund, via our Wealth Bonus Lifestyle Benefits, you qualify for a free will drafting with Sanlam. So if you don't have a will, important number one is that you need to get a will. You need to have a will in place. It just makes things so much easier further along the line, should a tragedy strike. And if you've got a will, have you considered either moving that will to Sanlam for safekeeping, or have you updated that will? I think, that about covers it from my side, Yolanda, for these different requirements when members are joining a new employer and joining a new fund.
If I may summarize that, what I have taken out from this discussion point is that joining a company or a new company is not just about signing on the dotted lines, right? It's about setting the stage for one's financial security and peace of mind in the years to come. The decisions that I, as a member, a new member to an employer, would have to make at the outset of my employment journey can have a far-reaching implication for their future, right? From understanding the various fund options available to grasping the importance of contribution levels and nominating beneficiaries, the discussion has clearly highlighted the need for informed decision-making from the get-go. I've got one question for you. I'll note that you've made emphasis on the significance of advice in empowering members to making choices aligned with their long-term retirement goals. Share with us how the Sanlam Umbrella Fund provides new members with resources to help them understand the journey that they've undertaken when joining this fund and to better comprehend the workings of the retirement fund. What is it that they can actually expect from the fund at this early stage of the retirement journey?
So as a new member of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, I touched on it earlier. We do provide members with membership certificates a couple of weeks after they've joined the fund. And as I mentioned, the membership certificate invites them to either transfer their current reservation to the fund or provide us with the paid up certificates that we can keep on record for members. So they, they're always aware of how much they've got in terms of their retirement savings. Some of the other tools are our day one tools, which consists of a video and a calculator. Now, the video speaks into it's a short animated video, and I think it's a nice little brief summary of the importance of a net replacement ratio. I like to refer to it as a salary replacement ratio within retirement. So the video explains basically how the calculator works, and what the calculator does is, because we've got certain information on record of a member. For example, we've got your personal details. We know how old you are, which fund you belong to. We know what your normal retirement age is on the fund. We know how much you are saving in terms of a contribution rate. We know where your money is invested in terms of investment portfolios. And with knowing all of these things, we can calculate your years to retirement. So we know how many more years you've got to work and how your funds are doing in the current investment portfolios. So what the calculator does is it uses various assumptions and information that we've got on hand, and we calculate based on your current savings and how you are saving towards retirement. How much money will you have at retirement age, and what type of pension are you able, or purchasing a guaranteed annuity or guaranteed pension is the assumption the calculator makes. It says to you how much of your last salary will you be able to replace within retirement. So it's not an exact science, and we know that members have other savings. They've got unit trust, or perhaps they've invested in property, but for the majority, again, like I said, let me rather say a large portion of ordinary South Africans, their retirement fund is very often the only savings that they have for retirement. So using the calculator will give you a very good idea, or a member a very good idea of how am I doing in terms of my retirement readiness, and do I need to save more, or do I need to make different decisions in terms of where I'm investing my money. So that's the day one tools. We also do SMS and WhatsApp campaigns or engagements with members, and where we share certain information specifically around new entrants and around choices that members can make. And via these engagements, we introduce members to the Sanlam portfolio app and the member portal. And as we know, the app and the portal is filled with tons of information, specifically under sort of the want to know more and the retirement sections where members can go and search for more information. There's also information addressing various life events, like divorce or birth of a child. There's tons of information there. And lastly, I think maybe a good mention is also our IMS, individual member support, that's also available to guide members through their journey, their onboarding journey.
Thanks, Virgil. As we progress beyond the initial stage of being new members, we recognize that life happens, right? What are the key considerations for members during their tenure with their employer when facing life changes? And before you respond to that, just also make emphasis on the specific events that have an impact on members during their retirement saving years.
Sorry, Yolanda, I don't know if it was my connection. Do you mind repeating that question, please?
So the question talks to what are the key considerations for members during their tenure with their employer when facing life changes? Additionally, could you emphasize the specific events that have an impact on members' retirement savings?
Sorry, Yolanda, thanks. I thought you were giving us a question from the audience. It's actually
no.
We prepared.
We're moving on.
Yes, thanks. So life-changing events during employment. So you're working for a company. You've been working for the company for a while now, and certain things happens along your journey to retirement. I know as employees, we don't think of it as our journey toward retirement. We think of it as our life journey. But if you look at yourself in the context of a member, it is your journey to retirement. So what could happen along the way? You could get married. You could give birth to a child or have a child, or you could adopt a child. I think some of also, again, important considerations when either of these life events occur. Again, going back to your beneficiary nomination form and your will, because something has changed in your life now, and you so very often we ask people, they've had a child and the child is 4 years old already, and you ask them, have you updated your will or have you updated your beneficiary nomination? And the answer to a lot of times to this question is no, but I am aware of it and I will get to it. So why this is extremely important, and again, depending on what sort of cover you've got with the fund. So if you've got approved death cover, not such a major train smash, because we know the trustees have a responsibility in terms of Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act. So they've got to identify the actual legal dependence of the member. But what happens if you've got unapproved cover? So unapproved death cover is what your employer takes out directly with the insurer, and the trustees of the fund are not involved with that cover at all. When you take out unapproved cover, you've got to complete a beneficiary nomination for unapproved death cover as well. And let's say, for example, you have got your spouse on and you've got one of your children on, but subsequent to completing that nomination, you actually gave birth to another child. If that child is not mentioned on that unapproved beneficiary nomination form, that child is not going to receive an allocation, because on the unapproved side, the insurer is not able to decide or apply any form of discretion in terms of who the money is paid to. They pay that, when I say they, the insurer, they pay the money to whoever was nominated on the form. So that could be challenging for members, in terms of being fair to their loved ones. So very important to consider when you've had a child or adopted a child, or perhaps if you got married and previously you had your mom on, like us young guys like to do. We like to make our moms our beneficiaries. When you get married, have you thought about your beneficiary nomination form, and have you updated that accordingly with your wishes? Another consideration is, do you have enough life cover? Because now suddenly, you've got a family, or your family's gotten bigger. And depending on how old your children are, if they're still very young and something should happen to you, what sort of legacy are you leaving behind? Are you leaving your family well taken care of? Is there going to be enough money to put your children through school or college? Is your wife going to be able to cope financially without you? So, important consideration, do you have enough life cover? Does your fund, by your participating employer, do they offer options in terms of flexible life cover? And if not, have you sought financial advice from a financial advisor? And then lastly, again, are you contributing enough for retirement? Depending on your situation, are you just gotten married? Are you trying to provide for two people in retirement or just one person? So always just something to consider at this event when you are getting married or having a child. Something else that could potentially happen during your employment is a death in the family. And again, I'm not going to go too much into the same sort of detail, but you can see a death in the family. It's going to impact the amount of people that you've currently got potentially nominated for a part of your benefits. So remember, at such an event, it's a traumatic event, but we need to try and remember to also again update our beneficiary nomination and our wills accordingly. And again, have you considered if anything else needs to be adjusted besides your nomination and your will, like your contributions or your life cover? It's not always a case of you need more life cover, depending, what sort of happened. You might find yourself in a position where you now need less life cover, and that's also a consideration and something you should get financial advice for. The last life-changing event or life event, sorry, I want to focus on is divorce. Again, have you updated your beneficiary nomination and will? And something to consider is, will there be a claim against your retirement benefit? I think this is quite important to consider. It could, depending on how much money you've got in your fund and depending on what a potential divorce court order says, you could find your fund credit now being split in two or being halved, and that could potentially impact your retirement journey or your retirement savings journey. So important to consider. Yes, it is a very traumatic time in anyone's life, but if in the event of a divorce where there is potentially a claim against your retirement fund, you need to go, back and use the tools and determine how does this impact your journey to retirement.
Thanks, Virgil. So there's a few questions that have come through the chat, right? And I think they fit perfectly with this life event or the life events highlighted here. There's a lot of questions around the world's drafting services and the costs of the world's drafting services. And I just want to highlight perhaps what the benefits are available for members of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. So I won't give this one to you. I'll answer that. So all members of Sanlam Umbrella Fund and the Sanlam Unity Umbrella Fund have access to a free will drafting service via Sanlam Trust, and as well as the free safekeeping of the will via Sanlam Trust. There's questions around the cost of the executive's fees. So these costs, once you've made contact with Sanlam Trust, these will be disclosed to you, and they are negotiated with the member via that service. So they will be taking into account the fact that you are a member of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. So that's one question, or one of the many questions that have been. The other questions, it's around the nomination forms, Virgil. So there's a question about when completing the beneficiary forms, should one complete it like they would a will, right? And this question goes on to unpack the being married in community out of community of property, right? And also, once you have that, we've also got a member. I want to plug these questions together. Got to know if they are married in community of property, can they exclude their partners from the beneficiary nomination?
Okay, so I must just a disclaimer up front that I'm not a professional, and especially when it comes to wills and the administration thereof versus a retirement fund, they are governed by two separate acts. I think it's called the Wills Act and the Pension Fund Act. I'll share what I think I do know. So the two has got no bearing on the other, or let me rather say that your nomination that you make in the fund has got no bearing on your will whatsoever. Your fund credit, there we've got a board of trustees whose responsibility it is to ensure that your benefit is distributed to your factual and legal dependents or people you've nominated. So, for example, you could find a scenario where a member has nominated his two minor children to receive his benefit and not his spouse. The spouse can sort of contest that nomination because at the death claim stage, the trustees gather information, important information from family members in terms of affidavits and things like that. So if it turns out that the spouse was indeed dependent on the member, the trustees have the right to overrule that beneficiary nomination and actually allocate a portion of the money to the surviving spouse. Similarly, to use another example, the member could allocate a certain amount of money to a minor child and a certain percentage to a major child or someone who's not dependent on the member financially. Again, the trustees have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the members' legal dependents are accommodated. So if that minor child is 4 years old, and has still got 14 years before the child becomes an adult and still got to go through school and studying and things like that, the trustees could make a different decision as was indicated in the beneficiary nomination form. Remind me again the second part in terms of the will.
It's about whether the partner can be included in the nomination of the beneficiary. I think you've actually covered it in your examples. Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is, and what needs to be clear to the members is that it's two separate processes that take place. Beneficiary nomination links to the retirement fund administration and will completely outside of the retirement savings part of your financial aspect.
Correct.
Thank you, Virgil. The information you've just shared is quite informative. And I think what I want to highlight from this part, the life-changing or the life events during the time that one is employed, is that one needs to be proactive and adaptable when facing these life changes, whether they are facing or whether they're at a point of getting married or starting a family or experiencing setbacks like divorces. Each event carries its own set of considerations, right? You earlier mentioned that Sanlam, or you actually put up a slide that Sanlam has a website or makes available a website called the Knowledge Base for its members that provided educational information where the Imali webinars are housed. And by virtue of the name of the website, the Knowledge Base, it's evident that it has information on life events that have been discussed today. What other educational support does the fund make available to active members of the fund?
Thanks, Yolanda. So, other support in terms of member education, IMS is an example of that, individual member support, where members can contact the IMS team directly for any guidance if they want to know anything about their funds. This Imali Zam session, member education sessions, this is one example of what the fund makes available. Again, our Sanlam retirement app and the member portal I've touched on it earlier as well. There are tabs on there with links to important information like want to know more and the members' retirement journey. We also distribute a newsletter, which is called the Prosper newsletter, regularly. And that is filled with useful information that members can use and need in terms of just educating themselves with with the right information. And I think one could also add to that even the default investment portfolios, because we know that not all members are investment experts. And for that reason, the trustees of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund have made available a number of investment portfolios, of trustee-approved investment portfolios, 3 of them being life stage models and 4 of them being protective strategies. And just perhaps quickly touching on what the various defaults does in the life stage portfolios. The aim of the life stage portfolio is to grow members' money in the accumulation phase. It's made up of 2 phases, accumulation phase and the preservation phase. So while members are within the accumulation phase, it aims to grow members' money until they reach about 6 years before retirement. And within that 6 years prior to the retirement age, we de-risk members' investment portfolio by means of 50 monthly investment switches, so that by the time the member is within 22 months of retirement age, they've actually completely de-risked and all their money is sitting in a capital protection strategy where members are not at risk of losing money, that close to retirement. And then there are, of course, the 4 secure strategies where members are, I think in a nutshell, I'll call it protected from the volatility of the markets. So I think that's those are the ways in which the fund tries to help members on their journey to retirement.
Thanks, Virgil. With just 10 minutes left of our time slot, I really want us to move on to the last life stage. As we navigate through our careers, it's inevitable that transitions will occur, whether it's moving to a new job, whether it's retiring, retrenchments, or even dismissals. Can you just shed some light on the considerations surrounding this life event or this pivotal stage of exiting a company for us, please?
Thanks, Yolanda. So, yeah, as you've mentioned, one could exit a company, and that can take place in various forms. So you could either resign, which means hopefully you found a new job and you're going to work for a different company, or you could have been dismissed or retrenched, and you're faced with certain options and you need to make certain decisions. So a very important decision is, do I preserve my money via many different avenues, whether it's in fund preservation, whether you are transferring it to the fund of your new employer, or to an external preservation fund, or do I take the money in cash? Now, something I just want to mention, and we're not going to go too much into it here. I'm mindful of the time, but we're currently in a certain retirement regime, and there's been lots of talk about two-pot happening, which will come into effect on 1 September. So what we're sharing now might not be 100% applicable as of 1 September, or as members start growing their savings from 1 September. Because as things stand under the current regime, when a member resigns, he or she is able to take all their money in cash. It's considered what we call now vested cash. So on resignation, members can take all their money in cash. Whether you belong to a pension or a provident fund, I think a big consideration for members is, do they need to take that money in cash? And if they do, how much can they take in cash, and how much should they take in cash? And I think an important consideration is how much tax members will be paying, because as we know, there isn't a large percentage of money that is tax-free when members change jobs. I've just put up the current table there, which indicates that members could potentially get 27,500 Rand tax-free of their benefit. However, something to consider is if you have changed jobs a couple of times already and you have taken your withdrawal benefit in cash, you may already have used up your 27,500 tax-free upon withdrawal, which means you will be taxed according to the scales currently in front of you. Into the future, from 1 September onward, things change with two-pot, and we're going to have another session on two-pot unpacking all of that. But members will no longer be able to take the money in their retirement pots. Not this money, your current money that you built up remains your vested money and your vested rights apply to it. But everything that you accumulate from 1 September onward, even when you change jobs, you will be forced to preserve that money. The only money that you could potentially take in cash would be the money that goes to your savings pot. But let's not go too deep down that rabbit hole. What else can happen when you're leaving your company? You could retire. So you've worked for many years, whether it be for one company, different companies, and you've saved for retirement for a significant amount of years. And now you're left with a decision in terms of, what do I do? Do I purchase a pension or do I take cash? Now, again, depending on sort of T-day regime, if I can call it that, what fund did you belong to? Did you belong to a pension or a provident fund? Will determine how much you can actually take in cash and how much you need to actually purchase a pension. So a lot of us will know, let me not say all of us, that if you belong to a provident fund previously, up until a certain date, all the money that you accumulated up to that date, you are able to take in cash. And if you belong to a pension fund, you are only allowed to take 1/3 of that money in cash, and the balance must be used to purchase a pension. There's, of course, other rules along the way in terms of the minimum amount. We talk about the de minimis. But again, when a member reaches that stage, or not even now, if they're curious about knowing, again, reach out to our IMS team just for an understanding, or if you actually need to make a financial decision in terms of your future retirement savings, bearing this in mind, then speak to your financial advisor. So members, let's say the members decided they're going to take maximum cash, which is 550,000 tax-free, depending, of course, if the member hasn't previously retired and they decide to purchase a pension, or they need to, they're forced to purchase a pension with the balance of the money. An important consideration is, what type of pension should I buy? Because I don't think members don't know that there are different pensions that exist, and that they need not just purchase the first pension or the first quote that they get. There are things like a guaranteed pension that will pay you a sum of money every month until you die, which is why we call it a guaranteed pension. There are pros and cons to each different type of pension. When you do pass away, the benefit also falls away, for example, but you do also get guaranteed pensions that's got guaranteed periods built into it. So even if something happens to you, if you've purchased a guaranteed pension with a 5-year guarantee or a 10-year guarantee, etc., that money will then continue to be paid to your dependent until the guaranteed period lapses. I'm just giving you little snapshots of how these different pensions work, but for advice on it and for the proper understanding, it is very important that you speak to a financial advisor. Just on a living annuity, so let's say you were thinking of purchasing a living annuity, this is where you basically have a sum of money that you're using to purchase this pension, and on an annual basis, you decide how much of that money you need to draw down, or you want to draw down, so whether it be 5% or 10%, and that will determine the monthly income that you get. This may be a suitable pension for a certain type of member or certain individual. It may be unsuitable for other members, because there's also a risk involved here that you could potentially run out of money, because members are responsible for their own decisions in terms of drawdowns, in terms of where their money is invested for certain products. So that may not be the right decision. There's also a thing called inflation-linked annuities. So it's not limited to just what I'm displaying on the screen. I think ultimately the important thing is when you need to make a decision about what type of pension, you need to seek financial advice. And the time to seek that financial advice is not when you have reached the retirement age or a year before retirement. It is now. However, wherever you find yourself on your retirement journey, the time to seek the financial advice is now, so that you can make sure you make the right choices along the way to achieve those retirement goals.
Thank you, Virgil. That is the last life stage in terms of a member's retirement journey. And really what you've highlighted is that exiting a company carries significant implications. And it's a time when a member must carefully consider their options. They must assess the impact on long-term retirement goal and plan for potential contingencies. I would like to encourage members to take time before making that decision, seek advice. The Sanlam Umbrella Fund makes available and makes it easier for themselves to plan before making a decision on what to do with their money using the in-fund preservation options that are available on the fund. We have run out of time, so we've attended to a few questions. I will not open our question and answer session during this time. Any questions that have not been responded to, we will address via the Q&A document post the session. Joel, thank you so much for your insightful contribution for today's session. You have shed light on important considerations during transitions in our workplace. As we wrap up today's session, I think it's evident that you've painted a vivid picture of the challenges and considerations that lie ahead for members of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. I'm confident that in today's session, today's session has sparked valuable reflections amongst our audience. Indeed, navigating complexity of retirement savings requires careful thought and considerations. As members of the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, I encourage you to take these learnings to heart, use them as guiding principles as you continue your journey towards financial confidence and peace of mind in retirement. Remember, every single decision you make today shapes your tomorrow. Thank you for your active participation and engagement. Together, let's empower ourselves and each other to build a brighter, more prosperous future. From Virgil and I, goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.